Good morning, everyone. It is 10 o'clock, and this business briefing of the American Rescue Plan will begin now. Commissioner Lamont, would you please start the presentations?
Absolutely. Thank you, Maria. Good morning, everyone, and thanks for joining us today. My name is James Lamont. I have the pleasure of serving as the Commissioner for the state of North Dakota's Department of Commerce. For those of you that are listening, I'm really glad that you can join us because we have a lot of unique information and insight that we're going to share with you today as it pertains to the American Rescue Act of 2021. We encourage you to share this with those that you know that were unable to join us today. And in addition to that, the recording of this call will be available at ndresponse.gov. I repeat, ndresponse.gov, as well as a plethora of information that will help you navigate this new piece of legislation. With that, I'd like to welcome the state of North Dakota's Lieutenant Governor, Mr. Brent Sanford.
Thank you, James. 2020 was a year of trying to find balance, and our businesses were resilient as they dealt with many of the challenges from the COVID-19 pandemic. We are now one of the leading states on vaccinating our citizens, and we're focused on getting our business economy back on track. The North Dakota Department of Commerce continues to award dollars to businesses as recipients of the various grant programs to get funds into the hands of North Dakota businesses. Now, the American Rescue Plan Act is another federal stimulus plan, a $1.9 trillion economic stimulus package to support the United States recovery from the economic and health effects of the COVID-19 pandemic, as well as the ongoing recession. This program supports the state, community, and businesses' efforts to move forward. Some of the key aspects of this plan include small business relief and restaurant revitalization, provisions for unemployment, housing assistance, as well as state, local, and tribal aid. Additionally, the federal legislation extends the Paycheck Protection Plan, provides additional funding for the EIDL Advance program, and support for shuttered venue operators to support live entertainment venues, theaters, museums, and zoos. Thank you for all that you do, and we look forward to economic growth and prosperity into the future for North Dakota. And now I'll turn it back to James.
Thank you, Lieutenant Governor Sanford. Joining us today for the briefing are Al Howd. He's the District Director of the Small Business Administration here in North Dakota. We have Mr. Phil Davis. He would be the one of the two deputies at Job Services North Dakota, as well as Darren Brostrom from Job Services North Dakota as well. You're going to hear about unemployment insurance, job openings, as well as pertinent information pertaining to items that will naturally impact your business. In addition to the Small Business Administration and Job Service North Dakota, we have the North Dakota Department of Health. Molly Howell, arguably the most effective infectious disease lead or vaccination lead here in the country, will join us and talk through some of the unique prospects underway. And this way you'll have a collective identification, and then we'll close with the North Dakota Chamber. Before I turn it over to the Small Business Administration, I just want to point out a couple things. One, you're going to hear a lot of information today. So again, please utilize the website as a resource. Two, the Department of Commerce is your resource as far as anything business community oriented is concerned or continuity is concerned. So if it gets complex, recognize that we stand ready as the North Dakota Department of Commerce to effectively serve as your concierge to navigate a lot of these complex programs. So please use this as a resource. There are a lot of bureaucratic elements. So if you're not getting answers from where you need it, come to us and we'll help you find a direction. And then lastly, you've got local developers as well as the SBDC represented throughout the state. Utilize those resources as well, because we're here to help. That's our job. And anyway, with that, I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to Mr. Al Howd, again, the District Director for the Small Business Administration. Thank you.
Thank you, James. Good morning, everyone, and thank you to the Department of Commerce, and thank you to the Greater North Dakota Chamber for allowing me the opportunity to share some additional information about SBA's program as it pertains to the variety of stimulus packages. And if we could go to the next slide, starts out with where we're at as far as SBA goes. We started this whole process back in a year ago now, March 2020, with the CARES Act that established the Paycheck Protection Program and the EIDL Advance. had some different changes to those programs over the summer months, and then they sunsetted or expired in last August. With the Economic Aid Act in December, we expanded the PPP program, added the second draw Paycheck Protection Loan, and then also added the Shuttered Venue Operators Grant. And then just earlier this month, the President signed the American Rescue Plan, provided some additional expansion to the Paycheck Protection Program, and then added the Restaurant Revitalization Fund. And that's kind of a key word there that we'll talk about in a couple of slides, fund versus grant. On the next slide, please. The American Rescue Plan changed the PPP program to expand eligibility to include all 501c organizations that are tax exempt under the IRS codes with a limit of 300 employees or less. There has been a lot of discussion. Certain 501c3 organizations, nonprofits were allowed under the CARES Act, Economic Aid Act added a few, and now Congress with the American Rescue Plan said all nonprofits that are tax exempt according to IRS will be eligible for PPP loans as long as they're within the size standards of 300 employees or less. It also allows internet publishers to apply for PPP loans, and then they were previously excluded. One thing I want to just kind of set the tone for is the second draw PPP. We've had a lot of questions on the eligibility for second draw PPP, and the language is pretty clear that to qualify for a second draw PPP, a borrower or business has to have used or will use the entire first draw PPP funds for eligible purposes within a covered period before the second draw loan is dispersed. And that's key because the covered period is a minimum of 8 weeks by definition. It's the covered period for the Paycheck Protection Program is 8 to 24 weeks, anytime in between, but sets a minimum of 8 weeks, and covered periods cannot overlap. So if you had your first draw PPP loan this year, this calendar year, if you got it early in January, you're probably up to your 8 weeks right now, which then you could go to your lender and say, hey, I've used my funds for their purposes within the 8 weeks. I should be able to qualify for an additional second draw PPP. If you were midstream or late into the application process and you just got your loan approved in mid-February, let's say, then your 8 weeks is going to run into April. And the current deadline for the Paycheck Protection Program is March 31st. Now, if you follow the media reports, the House in Washington approved an extension, but that has not been signed into law. It first has to go through the Senate. They have to approve it. Then it goes to the president for signature. That process has not been completed. So we can't say for certain that the program is going to be extended. But right now there is movement aloft, if you will, to extend that to a May 30th application deadline. Another just a quick clarification. We've had a lot of questions about the size standard. The second draw, we want, the SBA has been charged with serving the smaller organizations, those that have been adversely affected the most, had the most negative impact, and it's the smaller organizations. So we reduced the limit of employees for second draw PPP to 300 or less employees. For first draw PPP, it's 500 or less. Second draw, again, for smaller organizations, 300 or less. We also require a 25% revenue reduction or gross receipts reduction, and it's a calendar quarter. We've had a lot of questions about, well, can I use April, May, and June, or you have to use April, May, or June, but can I use June, July, and August? And no, it has to be a specific calendar quarter for that revenue reduction. Unless you don't track that on your revenue, your receipts on a quarterly basis, if your system's not set up to do find that information readily, we do allow that on an annual basis. If you've had a 25% reduction in gross receipts for the full year, by definition, you've had at least one quarter that's had that reduction, so then you could still qualify. And the maximum loan amount, $2 million, combined maximum is $4 million, and that is a much smaller amount than our traditional, the first draw PPP. Next slide, please. The American Rescue Plan had modified our targeted idle advance. And back in last March, the CARES Act charged SBA with providing an idle advance up to $10,000 for any small business. The American Rescue Plan has expanded that, added $15 billion, which includes $5 billion for hardest hit areas, and that is defined by low-income communities that have had a 50% revenue loss with 10 or less employees. For those businesses, in addition to the $10,000 grant that they could have qualified for, we are providing an extra $5,000 for those businesses in those hardest hit areas that qualify in a low income area and have a 50% revenue loss. Traditionally, with the title advance from last summer, the requirement was a 30%. Well, excuse me, back up. Last summer it was just idle advance period. With the Economic Aid Act, it required a 30% reduction overall for any business now that might potentially qualify. But if you have a 50% reduction, then you may get the additional $5,000 up to $15,000 total. That grant is not taxable. There has been some discussion about that, and that was clarified in some of these additional regulations. Now, I want to take just a quick minute and say that this should not be confused. The idle advance should not be confused with our regular traditional idle loan that is a loan from our Office of Disaster Assistance. That idle loan is not forgivable. That does have to be repaid. The payments on that are deferred, and they're deferred through the end of the end of 2021. So you don't have to start making payments for a while yet, but the payments will eventually begin. That's not a grant, and it's not intended to be a grant. Next slide, please. What we're hearing a lot of is businesses that have been most affected by this pandemic is restaurants. So Congress provided the Restaurant Revitalization Fund as part of the American Rescue Plan. And as I mentioned earlier, teased a little bit about it, it says fund, Restaurant Revitalization Fund, as opposed to our Shuttered Venue Operators Grant. And that's a slight change in terminology, but it means a big, has a big effect on how SBA can administer that program or this program. And I will say that information is all subject to change. SBA is still reviewing the official regulations on this, and we're in the process of issuing our guidance. But the difference between a revitalization fund and a grant, it allows SBA to change the way we administer providing the funds. If it's a grant, government granting institutions have a fair amount of regulations that we must follow to ensure that we're implementing the grant process effectively and efficiently. And because the Restaurant Revitalization Fund does not indicate specifically that it's a grant fund, then it might mean SBA has a more streamlined effect in issuing the funds. So at the local level, we're hoping that's the case and waiting for official guidance coming out of from our policymakers in Washington. Overall, to be eligible for to be a recipient of the revitalization funds means that a applicant must be a restaurant, a food stand, a food truck, food cart, caterer, bar, lounge, etc. Basically, somebody, an organization that provides food or drink to the public in a public space. It is limited to operators that own 20 or less locations and non-publicly traded companies. And again, Congress wanted to make sure that SBA is implementing this to the businesses that are small and potentially the most adversely affected by it. Next slide, please. There is going to be certifications on the eligibility form. Again, that the uncertainty of the current economic conditions makes this grant or this fund request necessary to support the ongoing operations. Second thing is that we are not going to allow a recipient to receive both a shuttered venue operators grant and a restaurant revitalization fund. So we're going to try to provide free money, but not double the money. Next slide, please. We're also charged with categorizing or prioritizing the recipients. So when we open up this fund, the application process, we're first going to gear it towards businesses that are owned and controlled by women, veterans, or those that are socially and economically disadvantaged. There will be guidance coming out on what that qualifies and how to report that or certify that, and the application window will likely be open for a period of time for just those businesses, so that we can make sure that those hardest hit businesses owned by these underserved markets get access to the funds first. Funding under this program is going to be limited to $5 million per location and $10 million max for affiliated entities. The grant amount will be equal to the pandemic-related revenue loss, which is defined as your gross receipts from 2020 minus the gross receipts from 2019. If you're a new business or in the process of starting after all of this after the pandemic got going, there's going to be some revised calculations on how to determine your revenue loss. You'll still be eligible for some funds. Look for additional guidance coming out on that. And also, the change with the American Rescue Act allows SBA to provide funding under both the Paycheck Protection and Restaurant Revitalization and the Shuttered Venues grant, as we'll see on a coming slide. But the PPP funds will be subtracted from any restaurant revitalization funding that you get. So if you're worried about which one do I apply for, PPP funds, or should I wait for the restaurant revitalization, you can go ahead and apply for PPP funds now, and any restaurant revitalization assistance will just subtract out the PPP funds that you receive. And these funds are not taxable. There was a big question under the CARES Act whether the PPP funds, the forgivable amount, would be taxable income or not. So Congress wanted to make sure that we addressed that they addressed it up front, and that funds under the restaurant revitalization will not be taxable. Next slide, please. We will have a limit on the use of funds, and the whole idea behind these stimulus packages is to help businesses survive. So the uses of funds will help pay the payroll costs, make your debt obligation payments, help pay rent, utilities, maintenance expenses, help provide supplies that you use in a normal day-to-day operation, as well as traditional operating expenses. It will not likely be used for expansion or remodeling or equipment purchases, etc. And there is a discussion going on right now as we speak in Washington how SBA is going to administer this program. It is a quote-unquote grant fund from SBA. It will not go through, or it will not likely go through a bank. It'll be direct funding from SBA to the small business itself. And we're in the process of trying to develop the logistics on how that's going to work, and if it's going to come directly from a department within SBA, or if it's going to come within, as the Shuttered Venue Operators Grant does, the Office of Disaster Assistance, which is a standalone department within SBA. More on that to follow, and if you follow SBA's website at sba.gov coronavirus relief, and it's coming up on a future slide here, that'll be the best place to get the most recent, most current information on it. As soon as we start promulgating some of the regulations on that, we'll be posting them on that site. Next slide, please. Quick comment on the Shuttered Venue Operators Grant. I know there's this was instituted in the Economic Aid Act in December, and SBA is diligently trying to develop the policies to roll that out. And I'm expecting that we will have news. I'm expecting that our new SBA administrator that just started this week will have some announcement on when the application process will open up. We're hoping it, expecting it to be soon, and look for some notices within the next week or so. The American Rescue Plan added some additional money to this fund. Just the amount of inquiries we've received on the grant application seems to indicate that we're going to have a high demand for funds, and Congress recognized that and gave us an extra $1.25 billion to help provide assistance under this program. And most importantly, again, it removes the American Rescue Plan, removed the prohibition of PPP assistance from the eligibility criteria for the Shuttered Venue Operators Grant. So again, if a venue, an operator, business owner is battling with, well, should I take the PPP now, or should I wait for the Shuttered Venue Operators Grant? You can go ahead, apply for the Paycheck Protection Program now and still apply. It won't disqualify you from applying. And if you receive funds under the Shuttered Venue Operators Grant, SBA will just deduct the Paycheck Protection loan amount from your grant amount. On the next slide, again, it's the sba.gov/coronavirus relief is a quick landing page for SBA's disaster assistance programs under the pandemic. It's got the access to the EIDL programs, the Paycheck Protection Program, Shuttered Venue Operators Grant, and the Restaurant Revitalization Fund will be posted there as soon as we start issuing some of the talking points and criteria on that. And then if you're a business owner, SBA has provided some additional funding for pandemic assistance to businesses through the additional money to these two organizations, the North Dakota Small Business Development Center and the North Dakota Women's Business Center. These organizations are SBA resource partners, and the state, through the Department of Commerce, matches funding to these programs, and they are charged with providing assistance to small business owners. And SBA has provided some little additional funding this year to help fund an increase in their outreach activities for pandemic assistance. So as a small business owner, you can reach out to these organizations and say, hey, I need help with revitalizing, refocusing on my business to help survive the pandemic, and they can help you through that process. That wraps up my part of the presentation. Now I am pleased to turn the presentation over to Phil Davis with Job Service North Dakota.
All right. Thank you, Al. Appreciate that. Good morning, everybody, and thanks for having me. I want to also say thanks to the Greater Chamber and the Department of Commerce for putting this great event on. Next slide, please. We just wanted to give an update of what we are seeing for statewide job openings, and that always gives us a small indicator of how our economy is doing. And I'm happy to report we have over 15,000 job openings in our state at the end of February. I thought I'd go back and just kind of take a look over the last 5 years of what our per month, what our job openings look like. And this February of 2021, this was the fifth highest month that we had for openings. So we are definitely on the rise. And frankly, I wouldn't be surprised if we hit that 16,000 mark over the next 2 to 3 months. Now, in comparison, we did hit a low in May of 2020. We hit a low of just over 10,000 openings. So as you can see, we've made some slow and steady growth per month since then. Some of the top 5 industries, it's always there. Healthcare, we've been talking about healthcare as long as I've been in job service, and that's been 14 years. We had some nice openings for agriculture, and of course, retail is starting to make a nice rebound. And the administration industry is always something that we see in the top 5 month to month. And of course, our construction season, we had 700 openings there. And I think over the next couple months, I wouldn't be surprised if we broke the 1,000 opening mark for our construction industry. Next slide, please. This just gives a little bit of a snapshot, year-over-year comparison. I just broke out the 6 top counties with their job openings, and you can see Cass County made a nice rebound from 2020 to 2021 with a little bit over 100 openings, as well as Ward. With Williamson Stark, with the downturn of oil and gas, we've seen a little bit of decrease from year to year. But the good thing there is we're starting to see a little bit of an increase, especially with our oil and gas industry openings. And that's, of course, great news for everybody there in that industry. When we look at the openings year over year or month to month even, and you see maybe it is a downturn of 200 or a downturn of 50, we really don't get excited about that too much, because if you look at the long term, we definitely always see movement in all of our counties. And if we were to see a downturn of 500 or 600 now, maybe we'd start looking at what's going on. But at any one month, we move from anywhere from 100 to 200 plus to maybe it's a backward slide of 100. So I just wanted to really point that out. But overall, we're doing really well with our over the year openings. Next slide, please. This is just a little bit of anecdotal information that we picked up through our 9 workforce centers. We're seeing some nice increases in openings. Like I mentioned, construction, we had over 700 openings in that industry. And like I said, I wouldn't be surprised if we hit the 1,000 mark in that. We've seen a really nice uptick in our agriculture manufacturing, especially in the Fargo area. But not only in our bigger cities where that manufacturing is taking place, but it's really nice to see some of the openings in some of our rural communities, your smaller mom and pop type of employers that provide that agriculture manufacturing. Maybe, it's just they produce one type of machinery, and we've definitely seen the increase there. Transportation, that's one industry that we normally see in the top 5, and we're starting to see more of the increase for CDL openings across the state, from east to west and north to south there. Food service and retail. Retail was in February one of our top 5 industries, and we're starting to see that along with the food service industry on a nice climb. So overall, I think we're doing really well in our job openings as a state. Next slide. So of course, with the good news with the job openings, got a the little bit of bad news that we have is prior or pre-pandemic, we had a workforce shortage. I think we can say coming out of the pandemic, we're going to have a workforce shortage, and it's really across all industries. Maybe not so much in oil and gas, because like I said, we're still seeing that turn around a little bit slower than the rest of the industries. But again, all sectors have been hit by this workforce shortage. State government, along with everybody else, right here in job service, we have had a hard time attracting and retaining individuals. We have full-time and part-time openings, so we're struggling like everybody else. But we can offer solutions. As the the slide shows, we have 9 workforce centers across the state. We're here to serve all of the businesses, all the employers. If one secret that isn't said too much is we have a database of resumes, and currently we have 12,700 resumes on our system, and they can be accessed by any employer as long as that employer is registered with us. So if you're looking for your next employer, please come and register with us. You can do that online. You can call your closest workforce center, ask for the manager, ask for the business consultant in those workforce centers, and they can help you get set up, registers with us, and we can get you into that database and start looking at those resumes. We also have been offering virtual job fairs. Through the pandemic, of course, we closed our workforce centers and reopened them back in June. And about the September timeframe, we started offering a virtual platform where you can go in, we can set it up for you on our system. We can also pair that with a Teams event, and we invite those looking for work as well as that featured employer that day, and use that platform for that. We are also starting to offer some in-person job fairs, in-person hiring events in more of our bigger facilities, as in Minot, Bismarck, and Grand Forks, where we have the room to do that in a safe manner. And we're also starting to put on in-person job fairs. Next week, I'll be in Fargo for our first in-person job fair in over a year, and we're having a construction job fair at one of the bigger hotels. And of course, we're sponsoring that and holding that. And I think currently we have about 15 employers signed up for that. So we're excited. We're excited for the future. And I please reach out to your closest workforce center. We have the tools available, you know, and like we say to employers and job seekers, look, and job service is just one tool in your big toolbox to either hire that next employee or to find the job that they're looking for. So please use us. Our website is jobsnd.com. You can find all of our information there. You can just click on the locations and it brings up whatever workforce center is closest to your region, and then it has the numbers and the manager, and ask for that person. So with that, I'd like to turn it over to one of my 2 bosses, and he's also our deputy director and our unemployment insurance director, and his name is Darren Brostrom. So Darren, take it away.
Thanks, Phil. As it relates to unemployment insurance, the changes in ARPA are really extensions of programs that were created during the pandemic. And there's 4 primary federal programs available, with each of the programs serving a different base of the working population. So if we go to the next slide, the Pandemic Unemployment Assistance Program, PUA, provides benefits to individuals who would not normally be eligible for unemployment insurance, with a primary focus of the program being the self-employed community. But since the beginning of the program, eligibility was expanded to include individuals who may have been denied for state benefits. So that program, the change in ARPA was that it was extended to September 6th, and now that program provides up to 79 weeks of benefits to individuals. So since March of 2020, the PUA program in North Dakota, we have paid $59 million out of that program. Next slide, please. The second program is the Pandemic Emergency Unemployment Compensation Program, and that's PEUC. It provides an extension of benefits to individuals who exhaust their state benefits. The primary focus of the program really remains as it was at creation, and that's to provide benefits to individuals who have had a delay in returning to work or had their employment ended due to the pandemic. And they subsequently used up all of their state benefits. And so where this really comes into play is with our seasonal workforce, those individuals that typically file every year, and for some reason, well, for the pandemic reasons, they were unable to return to work. This program provides additional benefits to them. And this program has also been extended from March 13th, which was the existing end date, to September 6th. And so now it provides up to 53 additional weeks of benefits, and that would be on top of, excuse me, the original regular state claim, which could have been anywhere from 12 weeks to 26 weeks. So since March of 2020, $100 million has been paid out under this particular program in North Dakota. Next slide, please. The third federal program available to individuals is the Federal Pandemic Unemployment Compensation Program, FPUC for short. And that program adds $300 additional to each weekly payment for any claimant for that. And that's the claimant can be under any particular program. And this program began as a $600 weekly payment, and that expired in July of 2020. In January of 2021, the program was reinstated at the current $300 level. This program, as the other ones, has been extended to September 6th. And since March of 2020, we have paid $489 million in FPUC benefits to North Dakota claimants. Next slide, please. The fourth program for individuals is the Mixed Earner Unemployment Compensation Program, MEUC. And what this program is it provides a $100 per week supplement to claimants who have had self-employment earnings of at least $5,000, and they also worked for a liable employer. This program is fairly new. It actually began in January of 2021. And as with the other programs, this has also been extended September 6th. There's kind of a common theme here. They were all going to expire on March 13th, and they've all been extended to September 6th of this year. To date, we have not had any applications for this particular program, and so no benefits have been paid under it. Next slide, please. The next two slides really are more impactful to the employer community. ARPA contains support for nonprofit organizations and for governmental entities, and that could be local or municipal state government entities. These employers will typically choose to be reimbursable employers for unemployment insurance purposes. And what that means is they reimburse the unemployment insurance program for benefits paid rather than pay quarterly unemployment insurance taxes. So in 2020, the CARES Act provided assistance to these employers by reimbursing 50% of the cost of all benefits paid to past employees of theirs, of these organizations. The program was set to expire in March, as the other ones were, and through this time frame, the reimbursement level had remained at 50%. With ARPA, the period of reimbursement has now been extended to September 6th, and for the period of reimbursement after March 31st, 2021, the rate of reimbursement has increased to 75%. Next slide, please. The last primary piece here is federal funding of the first week of unemployment insurance benefits paid. ARPA carries over the federal reimbursement for states that waive or have no waiting week for claimants. And as I'm sure many of you are familiar, we currently are waiving the waiting week for claimants. And what this means is that the first week of benefits paid to individuals receiving state unemployment insurance benefits are covered by the federal government. And with the other programs, this reimbursement period has extended to September 6th. While waiving the waiting week really provides a benefit to the unemployed individual, it also provides a benefit to the employers of the state by helping to reduce the expenditures from our unemployment insurance trust fund. And by reducing those expenditures, we positively impact the tax rates for employers. So we're projecting that by the end of 2021, this reimbursement will have saved the North Dakota Trust Fund between $50 and $100 million. Next slide, please. This slide really just shows kind of payments that we've made The unemployment insurance system has provided really a record level of payments since the pandemic began, with total funds injected into the economy of North Dakota through the unemployment insurance system exceeding $1.09 billion. And for perspective, in 2019, we paid just around $80 million for the entire year. I think our high previously was around $170 million. So we've exceeded that by 10 times and getting into that $1 billion mark. So by the end of the year, we'll be at probably $1.5 billion that we'll have paid out. So with that, our next presenter is Molly Howell, MHP. She is the Immunization Director with the North Dakota Department of Health.
Thank you so much, Darren, and good morning, everyone. Today, I was just going to provide you with an update regarding COVID-19 vaccine, as vaccination will be critical in getting our state more back to normal or to a new normal. So next slide, please. When considering whether or not to receive COVID-19 vaccine, we just want to make sure people are weighing the benefits of vaccination with the risks of COVID-19 disease. And so the clinical trials for the 3 vaccines that are currently available in the United States followed a large group of participants, over 30,000 individuals, and showed that the vaccines were safe and effective. And since completing clinical trials, more than 115 million doses of COVID vaccine have been administered in the United States. By vaccinating, you're not only protecting yourself against COVID-19, but also likely preventing the spread of the disease to children you care for, loved ones, and then, of course, your community and coworkers. We do believe COVID-19 is a pivotal step towards regaining normalcy and potentially reducing the use of some of the social distancing measures and hopefully eventually masking. Now, when we look at potential risks of vaccination, which many people have questions about, really the side effects, which are generally headache, fatigue, fever, muscle aches, last just 1 to 2 days. And then severe allergic reactions, also known as anaphylaxis, are extremely rare and manageable with treatment. And so right now it's about between 2.5 and 5 cases of anaphylaxis per 1 million people vaccinated. And so when we compare that to the risks of COVID-19 disease, 1 in 525 North Dakotans have died with COVID-19. 1 in 200 have been hospitalized, and 1 in 8 North Dakotans have tested positive. So COVID-19 is a serious illness. There's no way to predict how you will fare with COVID-19, even if you are younger. We've had younger individuals hospitalized or had long-term impacts from the disease. You may have heard of long haulers. And so that's why you really do want to consider vaccination, even if you are younger and healthy. And then also it's looking more and more like COVID-19 vaccines will prevent spread of the disease to the people around us, including our loved ones or other people who are potentially vulnerable. Next slide, please. In North Dakota, we have been doing pretty good about getting COVID vaccine out to those who want it. We generally have been in the top 3 in the United States for the percent of doses administered out of those received. This is data as of this past Wednesday. 1 in 4 North Dakotans have received at least 1 dose of COVID-19 vaccine so far. As of this morning, that was up to 27% having received at least 1 dose. Over 300,000 doses have been administered in the state, and over 115 million doses have been administered in the United States. Next slide, please. I just wanted to briefly touch on the 3 vaccines that are currently available to prevent COVID-19. There's 2 what are known as messenger RNA vaccines, the Pfizer and Moderna vaccines, and those are both 2-dose vaccines, so you need 2 doses to be considered fully vaccinated. The Pfizer vaccine is 2 doses 3 weeks apart. Moderna is 2 doses 4 weeks apart. And then we have the Johnson & Johnson vaccine that became available in early March. That is the only vaccine that is just a single dose vaccine, so you just need 1 dose to be considered fully vaccinated. All 3 vaccines in clinical trials showed 100% efficacy at preventing hospitalization and death. And the Johnson & Johnson vaccine was even tried in South Africa, where there's variants. 95% of the cases in South Africa are a variant virus, and it was still 100% effective against hospitalization and death. I already kind of touched on the side effects, but I do want to mention that for Pfizer and Moderna, it does appear side effects are more common after the 2nd dose. And then again, over 100 million doses so far administered in the United States. And so people can feel confident in the safety of the vaccine, knowing how many people have already received it. And then just to touch on cost, cost should not be a barrier whatsoever to vaccination. The vaccine is free. Healthcare providers may charge an administration fee to insurance. But if individuals do not have insurance, they cannot be charged and cannot be turned away from receiving vaccination. Next slide, please. I often get asked which is the best COVID-19 vaccine or which COVID-19 vaccine should I receive, and really the message is the best COVID-19 vaccine to get is the first one that you are offered. We are in a pandemic and vaccine supplies are limited, so as soon as a vaccine is available to you, please accept that vaccine. We don't want people to have product or brand preference and miss out on an opportunity to receive vaccination. Next slide, please. So these are our COVID-19 vaccination priority groups that were established by the North Dakota COVID Vaccine Ethics Committee. You can see we are statewide in Phase 1C, which are where most of the essential workers in North Dakota and then people with 1 or more underlying health conditions are located. Even though we are in Phase 1C, people who are considered in Phase 1A or 1B can and should still be vaccinated. And anyone who has trouble finding vaccine who are in Phase 1A or 1B can call our hotline and we'll try and get them set up with vaccination. For Phase 1C, I just wanted to touch on because there does seem to be some confusion over who is an essential worker. So if we go to the next slide, there's a snapshot from the Homeland Security CISA website as to the categories of essential workers. Over 50%, 57.2% of North Dakotans are considered essential workers. This is everyone from restaurant employees to banking, real estate, construction, farming, anyone in transportation, and then of course manufacturing, energy. And so we really do, most people are essential workers, and if they're not an essential worker, most North Dakotans unfortunately have an underlying health condition that puts them at high risk for severe COVID, whether that's smoking, obesity, or heart conditions. And so the vast majority of North Dakotans are currently eligible for vaccination and should be vaccinated. Next slide. Essential workers are critical to keeping communities open, and that is ultimately why they were prioritized for vaccination. We want to keep our economy open and thriving and successful, and so we really think employers play a critical role in promoting vaccination and getting their employees vaccinated. If you are wondering how to find vaccine, on the next slide here, You can go to our website and we have a COVID-19 vaccine locator. You can put in your county or your city and it will show you which providers have COVID vaccine currently, which priority group they're vaccinating, and how to sign up or contact them to access vaccine. Additionally, Thrifty White is receiving vaccine directly from the federal government, and they also have a website where they specifically show cities, how many appointments are open, what times are available for appointments. And so just go to our website and our COVID vaccine locator, and you should be able to identify where vaccine is available in the state. Next slide. So what can workplaces or employers do to promote COVID-19 vaccination? It really starts with leadership. Leadership and leaders should encourage staff to get vaccinated against COVID-19 and lead by example. Get vaccinated yourselves and tell your staff that you are vaccinated and promote vaccination. Please encourage your staff to learn more about COVID-19 vaccine, especially from reputable sources like the North Dakota Department of Health or the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention. There's a lot of misinformation out there on the internet and social media, and so we want people making an informed decision regarding COVID-19 vaccination. As much as you can, please be flexible in your human resource policies. If you can let people leave during the day to receive a COVID vaccine, and be understanding that they want to get vaccinated and encouraging vaccination. We have posters available on our website if you want to promote vaccination to your staff and hang up flyers. We also on our website have sample newsletter articles and sample emails that you can send out to staff to promote COVID vaccination. If you are able, we've been hearing that incentivizing vaccination works. That doesn't necessarily have to be monetary. It can be gifts or swags or acknowledging people who get vaccinated. If you go to our website, we do have a link for workplaces where you can find customizable emails, letters. We have an FAQ, and then we also have a short educational webinar that you could have your staff watch so that they can learn more about COVID vaccine and the benefits of vaccination and the risks of disease. Additionally, just this morning, we have a new survey that businesses can fill out if you would like to receive more information about COVID vaccine, including weekly little emails that you can send out to staff. And then just if you're interested in having on-site vaccination, we can potentially put you in touch with a vaccinator. Right now, with vaccine being fairly limited, on-site vaccination may not be possible immediately, but it could be in the near future. And then I think the next slide is just our main message is sleeves up, North Dakota. It's your turn as workers and employers to get vaccinated, and we hope all of you will consider vaccination so North Dakota can keep our economy open and move back to a new sense of normalcy. And with that, I will turn it over to James, I believe.
Hey, thank you. I really appreciate it. First, I want to thank the Commerce team for putting this together. They worked very hard to get this information assembled so that we could articulate this to you today. I want to emphasize again, we're in this together. Leverage commerce, leverage the small business development centers, the SBA, and your local developers as concierges. This is a very complex federal environment in terms of programs, and we want to make sure you don't spend hours and hours and hours digging through stuff. One area you can go, I'm going to emphasize again, check out nd.gov. Not only is it updated right now, but as Al mentioned earlier, as new information comes out, we're going to make sure that that's available so that everybody has access to it. So continue checking it out, find out about resources, whether it's for job services information, SBA programs, commerce programs, health information. All of these components are there, one-stop shop, and we're here for you. To wrap up today's briefing, I want to thank you as well for joining us, and then I'd like to turn this back over to Eric Spencer. And Eric, thank you for teaming up with us again on this beautiful Friday. And Eric Spencer is our president and CEO with the Greater Chamber for some closing remarks. Thank you again, everybody.
And thank you, James, and thank you all for attending. We certainly hope this information has been helpful to businesses all across our great state. As a reminder, James said at the top of the hour, for the latest updates, go to ndresponse.gov and click on the Business and Employer Resource section. You'll find the latest updates there. You can also check out the Department of Commerce's social media pages. Today, a recording of today's material and session will be available at ndresponse.gov as well as ndchamber.com under the COVID-19 response section. So with that, have a great Friday, stay safe, and we will talk to you next time.
This live broadcast has been completed. Thank you for joining us.